just talking to ordinary people who are actually extraordinary, because everybody has amazing things that they do and get through in life every day of their lives. They just don't give themselves enough credit, and they also don't. They may see the good in others. They don't see enough of the good of them in themselves. But this is about expanding your mind, about getting some inspiration, and it's just the little things. Because as Dominic defined for us last week, happiness is in the moment. Happiness is just those times where you really are aware and feel yourself being in a place where you're happy. It's a destination. So we have a guest in the studio today that you have met before. She's an amazing young woman who has already done so much in her young life, and her name is Mai Gutman. And Mai Gutman, we introduced to you as a female lone soldier in Israel. Now she's back in Australia. She's doing a journalism course, and I'm really thrilled to have her in the studio. Welcome back, Mai.
Thank you so much for having me as well.
And how have you been enjoying being back in Australia?
Being back's a bit weird. I'm not going to lie. Being back with the family and seeing all the familiar faces around the community. But it's very familiar. It's a familiar atmosphere, and it makes me feel, quite warm to be here again. And
is it that you feel that you grew up through your experiences in Israel as a lone soldier, or is it something else? Is it a natural emotional maturity, or is it your eyes were open to things in Israel?
I think it's a bit of both. I reckon maybe it's probably, you don't really realize, you don't notice the change that happens. You only really notice it when you come back and you sort of see there's a difference in how you react to things and how the topics of conversations, what interests you and what doesn't. And the more you know, I suppose, it's just different, and you don't realize the change as it happens in the process, but you notice it a lot later. I mean, with my friends and, what they're up to and what I'm up to, it's just two completely different places
of where you are.
Yeah.
Because of, and of course it is because of your experience.
Yeah, definitely.
But do you remember when your very first day when you were thrown into the army that you'd been looking forward to and anticipating, and now it's here? When you put your head on the pillow that night, what were you thinking?
Oh, wow. When I was in Israel, like on the first day?
Yes.
The first day was quite overwhelming. I wasn't really sure where I was and what I'd gotten myself into, but it's certainly put a lot into perspective. There's not a single night that goes by that I don't think about the soldiers that are there, the soldiers that are sleeping or guarding or doing whatever. And it's so important. Like, it's put everything in into proportion for me.
What do you remember about that first day? What was the first thing? What was the first exercise? What were you for? Were you first given new clothing or uniforms? Take us through that first day.
So the first day was a lot of bureaucracy. It was sort of arriving at what's called the Bakum, which is like where all the new drafts are sort of greeted, and they're taken through this whole process of setting up all the bureaucratic things, such as like your bank details and getting your dog tags and getting your injections if you need them, vaccinations and all that stuff, getting your photo ID, getting your I don't know how to say it in English. Wait 1 second. The x-ray of your teeth.
Wow.
Because that's very important in terms of, God forbid, if something happens and you needed to identify someone that you can't necessarily see their face anymore.
So it was exciting or sobering?
It was quite tedious, I'm not going to lie, that part specifically. Yep. But then when you get to base, when you get on the bus and they take you to all your respective bases and where you're supposed to be, it's quite overwhelming. There's a lot going on, like, your commanders are sort of telling you what you need to do and where you need to go, and you're sort of just trying to grasp the whole, okay, wait, I'm in the army, 1 second, who am I supposed to answer to, what am I supposed to say, how am I supposed to act? And yeah, it's a lot to get your head around, I think.
Are you talking to the other people around you that are also experiencing this for the first time, or are you in your head, or what's the...
It was a bit difficult as someone that coming from like a completely different background, coming from like overseas, and as opposed to someone who, let's say, most of my friends that already had older siblings in the army, they know what they're sort of getting themselves into, they know what's to come. So it was a bit hard to relate to some of them, but I did have a few other lone soldiers in my crew, so that was that was a bit easier to have someone to talk to. And
did they introduce you to them, to each other specifically?
No, it was sort of just more like a get along type thing, like, you know, you got to sort of work it out for yourself, like when you're in your bunks or when you've got your sort of alone time or whatever, you sort of try and make friends and see who you're grouped with and see who your partners are, because these are the people that you're going to be spending the next 3 years of your life with. Like everything from eating, sleeping, go to the bathroom, you know, showering, everything is together all the time. You're always together, so you really got to get to know them, whether they're Israeli or whether they're not.
And are you in your head for a lot of that for the first couple of days, or you're actually talking, discussing, seeing if anybody else is feeling the same way? What's the kind of feeling?
I don't think there's much time for personal reflection whilst you're at least in the first few months. There's no time whatsoever, unless you're, you know, you got the weekend off or you're on the weekend on base or whatever. Unless you're on like a guarding post and you've just been there for like a few hours, you don't really get that time to sort of sit down and say, okay, wait, let's look at everything that I've been through, everything that I'm going through, let's try and put everything into its place.
So everything that you're getting instructions on exactly what to do once you get to your base. You've got commitments to be places at certain times, to fall into jobs at certain times. That's all being given to you, and you're just following directions.
Exactly. And it's not even a question. Like, you can't ask questions, you can't ask why, you just got to do it. You know, if they say, you know, just run to that pole 20 times there and back, you got to do it. You're not allowed to ask questions. You ask questions, you make it longer, you know?
So coming from a place in Australia where you're free and you're loved and adored and it's all about you, to we're going to tell, what's that like?
It's it's crazy. I specifically didn't make the switch in my head for a while. I was still very, I would say, quite self-involved back then. I was very sort of, you know, a bit of a princess. When I first got there, I was still sort of like, I was still sort of like, wait, so why do I have to wash my dishes? Yeah, it was a bit of a shock, I'm not gonna lie, but it's definitely, I definitely got my slap across the face.
But nobody's bucking up against it, or a few people are, and you're also
I mean, you get the handful of kids that'll be a bit misfits, a bit of, you know, misbehaved or whatever, but the army definitely gives them their 2 slaps across the face. Like, there's no question about it. There's no room for joking. There's no room for you know, being all stuck up and whatever.
So this tone is set from the very beginning.
Yeah, pretty much. It took me, I think, maybe... It took me a while, not going to lie, but it happens in stages. And I think once you get past, because it is, after all, the army is a framework, and you do have people looking after you. You have your commanders to answer to, and they also look after you in return. So it is a bit of what's called a chamama. It's like that translates directly to like a greenhouse. So it's sort of the metaphor of being sort of kept and sheltered. Yes. But once you finish your 8 months of training, it's pretty much it's a completely different mindset, and you have to start getting used to something else, because you're sort of on your own, doing your own thing within the battalion, within the unit, and you get sent to your specific specialization or whatever it is, and then you have to do your missions according to what you've been trained to do. So it's very different. It's not having someone to look after you or tell you when to go, when to get up, and when to do this, because if you're not looking after yourself, like, you're the only one to answer for it.
So this process, so maybe not the first night you lay down, but what was that process in your head to the realization that this is good for me, this is something completely different, I'm going to not only survive but finish this and do it? Because I'm sure there were doubts as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. Honestly, I can't give you an exact answer on that one, because I don't think I was very aware of it at the time, but I do remember a lot of things going through my head at times. Sometimes, you know, what am I doing it for? Is it worth it? Like, I could be back in my bed, you know, with my family in a nice cozy house. Like, why am I doing this? But did you think about, maybe I've had enough of this and I don't really want to do it? heaps of times that came across my mind. No doubt. I'm not even going to lie about it. Like, it came across many, many times when we were going through bad situations or, just in a bad place and
tired.
Yeah, you just got to really remind yourself all the time what the reason you came here for, where you come from, your morals, your goals. And the fact of the matter is, you're here. So,
and that's really where my next question was going. What is it that got you through those times and kept you there till the end?
It takes a lot of strength, mental strength, I think. A lot of people say that the army is maybe 20% physical, 80% mental. It's really keeping yourself on track. It's keeping yourself, I would say, sane, but like very specifically to your field of choice. So let's say I was in combat, so it was a bit harder for me than it was for other girls that do like desk jobs or whatever else. Having the fact that we are overseas and far from our families is hard enough as it is, but I think being out in crummy places, being dirty, being, having to carry heavy things and, being put through all this physical stress, it stresses out us mentally as well. So keeping yourself strong is really important. Having good friends as well to keep you strong is very important.
Were you able to connect with friends?
100%. They're probably the people that I met in the army. They're better friends than anyone that I had been through kindergarten with or through my whole high school. They're people that I had known for maybe 3 months and I felt like I knew them my whole life, and to this day we're still in contact almost every day we speak.
So Mai, how much of it was I've made this commitment and the responsibility to the commitment I've made is important that I have to finish this?
Well, in terms of finishing, the army service, yes, I did have to finish it.
But was it your commitment or was it other things that you were discussing and talking to with the other girls? Or what?
Yeah, well, as lone soldiers, we actually have a right to get half a year off our service if we want. If we see that, there's other opportunities or whatever for us, we're able to get half a year off with no questions asked. I think... for a lot of the girls, actually, one of my good friends, she did the program, a different lone soldier program for only a year and a half, and she was determined to finish the full 3 years. So she added on an extra year and a half of service for herself. So seeing that and seeing myself, who was actually at some point seriously deliberating this half a year cut back, it's really interesting to see all the different, how would I say, the shikulim, the balance, what I would sort of weigh up in terms of, is this what I want? Or all my friends back home, they've already finished, their first degree and I'm still, in the army. What am I doing with my life type thing?
There's also that, but just generally in life, you always have choices. And one of the major choices is to run and go home. I would imagine, especially from the way that you're describing the first week or how hard the first 2 weeks even were. So there was always that choice to leave. But did you completely not see that as a choice?
The choice to leave is a very tough choice, not because of making the choice to give up and quit, but because the literal bureaucracy of it is so hard and heavy that no one actually wants to go through it. So you'd have to be in very, very dire situation to have to want to go through that whole process. It's worse than the whole army together. Like, I can't, just that process of leaving early or whatever. It's not like a summer camp. You can't just sort of sign yourself and say, oh, mum sent a note, like, can I leave now type thing. It's you've signed on to this pretty heavy duty and you
commitment.
Do have to, unless you're in a shocking, God forbid, mental state, like you want to go and do things, unspeakable things, then...
Well, I love what you've just said, because where I was going was that so many people start things in their lives and they don't finish, whether it's little things or even small commitments to go meet somebody and it's too hot, so you don't go because it's too hot.
Yeah.
So there's always that choice, and the choice to remain strong to your commitments. What you did was was really major commitment, but it also analogizes to smaller commitments as well. But I loved your answer, because it's too much trouble.
It really is. Like, it's a lot of effort. I mean, it's speaking to lots of different people, and it it takes such a lengthy process that you think, by the time I'm finished the process, my time is already up. So what's the point,
At what stage did you relax enough to really start enjoying the experience?
Oh, wow. I can't really pinpoint that one, but I know that once I finished training, I actually realized that my training days were the best days and that what's to come is going to be a lot harder.
Wow.
But definitely when I get those weekends off, when I'm back home and I'm with my friends and, we're going to parties or we're hanging out or whatever, that's when I so truly appreciate where I am and what I'm doing and this huge journey, and it sort of gives me strength to start every week again from the start, So that's definitely, every time I get home, I just sort of sit down with myself and I think about how important it is that what I'm doing is still right, and what I'm doing, the reason what I'm doing all this stuff for is it's still very important.
Of course. I remember one of my first trips to Israel when I was about 16 or 17, and we met these older boys who were in the army, and one of the huge realizations for me was that I was out with these guys who were young and fun and, just like Australian guys, but even more fun because they were Israeli.
Yeah.
And then realizing that, and they didn't talk about this, but just the realization that what they were doing was really serious stuff, that these kids, these boys they had been through situations that nobody in unless you've been in the army has really been through.
Yeah. But you, of course, you become desensitized, I would say, to the situation. I mean, people back home, they would always ask me, how do you feel? Like, are you not sort of always sort of alert? Are you always stressed? How do you feel inside all the time? And I don't really think about it. Like, I didn't think about it the way they thought about it. I thought about it as it was just something I'm doing, it's just my job. Like, you guys go to your jobs every day and I go to my job every day. And when I'm on the weekend, I try not to think about it, like.
And one of the reasons that I'm emphasising this and even talking about it more is that in day-to-day life here in Australia, it's certainly not the same situation, but there are so many people that flake. They flake on so many things, and everything from work to their commitments to family and everything else. So this mindset that you've come back with, it's not just a mature mindset, but it's something that will hold you in amazing stead for the rest of your life. And you went through an extreme way to get it by joining the army and going through the training and everything, but it's such a rich, important thing to do. So that's part of why I'm also just going through small details with you. I want people to understand what it's really like to get to a mindset that serves you for the rest of your life. How did you deal with missing your family and your friends back in Australia? Was that?
It was definitely hard, especially for someone like me. I used to get homesick very easily. Like, I used to be, the first day of school camp, I would call my mum, tell her to come pick me up because I couldn't handle it. But I don't know, something about being in Israel made me feel a lot more at home than I was actually in Australia. It was a bit of a weird sort of sensation that I felt when I was there, something that was sort of hugging me, like the community, all of Israel, really my commanders, my friends, everything just felt a lot more at home than I actually felt even when I was here.
Yeah, that sense of Jewishness, that sense of connection to Israel, it must be genetic. It just must be.
It has to be something biologically, or I think it's just some sort of a chemical reaction even, like, that you feel in your mind, because every time I go there, every time I'm here, even now that I'm here for the next, 3 years, I still feel like it's a visit. I don't feel that this is my home, and I don't feel that this is where I belong. When I go back to Israel, I'm just like, oh, yes, I've come home. Like, do you know what I mean? It's a different feeling. It's a completely different feeling.
And you were born in Israel, but you were a baby when you left and came to Australia.
Yeah.
How old were you on your first visit back?
My first visit back after when I was a baby.
Yeah.
I was 15 months when we first got to Australia, and then I just remember when I was younger, we used to go every 2 or 3 years. We used to go for a visit.
So I was born in Russia, and I came to Australia when I was 3 or 4 years old.
Okay.
And my first visit to Israel was when I was 17 years old.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so the whole Jewishness thing for me, it didn't come from Russia. It didn't, couldn't possibly have come from school. I was sent to Jewish schools because that my parents didn't know they knew they were Jewish. They didn't know what it was all about. So I was sent so I could come back and tell them all about what being Jewish was. So it was a learning thing. And I went to Mount Scopus and Beth Rivka. But the actual Jewish, the commitment to Israel was always there. I was always a Zionist for as long as I can remember. And my first visit to Israel was when I was 17 years old, and I remember landing at Ben Gurion Airport and just bursting out crying.
Yeah.
First of all, they used to play Haveinu Shalom Aleichem when you landed.
Yeah,
I don't know why they don't do that anymore. But also getting off that plane and being on the tarmac and just feeling it, it was already that feeling
it's
you were
huge.
talking
Yeah,
about.
it is a very huge sensation, and I can't even describe it. I think only one that's been there and felt what I'm talking about. It's just this overwhelming sort of, it's a happiness, but it's this strong emotion of connection. It's a feeling of connection, and it's a feeling like you've arrived in the place that you need to be, that this is where you need to be in the world, and this is where you connect to, and it's incredible.
And I had that same feeling when I went to the Kotel for the first time, when I came into the plaza and I saw the Kotel. From nowhere, we were walking, we were talking, we were joking, and all of a sudden, my God, there's the Kotel.
Yep.
And it's that same overwhelming feeling where you just start crying.
Yep.
And that's the kind of passion that when you connect to that anywhere
and that's
in your life.
That's what drove me really, like all the time through the army. That's what really drove me to keep going no matter what, just keep on keeping on. Yeah.
So your parents sent you to Jewish schools here in Melbourne?
Yeah, so I did primary school in Yavna, and then I finished my secondary schooling in Scopus, Mount Scopus College.
Do you still have very strong friendships from Yavna?
From Yavna, to be honest, not really. I mean, I used to be a part of Bnei Akiva, part of the youth movement, and we used to stay in contact for quite a while until I left. To be honest, even from Scopus, I don't really keep in touch with many of the people there. I don't feel as connected to people here that I do to my friends in Israel. I don't really know how to explain it, but it's sort of like there's not really much. People sort of move on and do different things in their lives, obviously, but I mean, I feel like there's a specific, lack of interest and lack of sort of mutual understanding, if you know what I'm talking about.
About Israel in general, about life in general?
I think about life specifically. Like there's, common topics of conversations or things that they, share lots of experiences with. I just can't seem to connect with those topics of interest or with any of that. I can't really connect with them anymore. So, it's quite hard.
But in primary school, for example, like you have play dates and you play. You sort of go to the movies. You just sort of
look,
hang
I mean,
out.
on a superficial level, of course, I can put on a smiling face and
I know what
be
you
friends
mean
with everyone, but
I'm just trying to get you to articulate a little more. But I do understand what it is that you're saying.
Look, I do. I am trying to articulate as much as I can on that level. It's just quite a hard feeling to describe. It's sort of just a lack of connection. Like it's a.
Yes.
It's not in a snobby way. I'm not talking about it in a snobby way. I'm just talking about, there's things that they don't understand that I do, and there's also maybe some things that I do understand and that I don't understand that they do, and I just feel that there's sort of in Hebrew it's called ketzer b'tikshoret, it's a cut in the connection type thing.
Got it. But and in high school there was. In
high school, I mean, when I was
friends with some of the did you feel a greater connection there, or was it the same sort of thing?
Look, it's still pretty much the same thing. I mean, I don't mind hanging out. I don't mind going to the movies, going to get grab a drink or a coffee or whatever with some of my old schoolmates. But at the end of the day, it's not, I wouldn't invite them like to have a real sort of chat about life and stuff like that. I mean, I do find it interesting and do find it interesting about what they're going through and stuff like that, and that they've had different experiences to me, but it's still not on the same level. I mean, I have much better conversations with my friends back home than I do with my friends from high school.
So it's a different kind of mindset. What I can tell you is it does get better connecting with anybody, because the journey you're on is really connecting with yourself.
Right.
And so the more that you integrate that, it's easier to connect with anybody on that level, on your level as well. So my personal belief system is that, when Moshe came down the mountain with the 10 Commandments, they say that every Jewish soul that was or will be in the future were all there at the giving of the 10 Commandments. Well, how is that possible? The population wasn't that great. There weren't that many people. And so, but people's souls are not their bodies. So first of all, when you die, your body goes, but your soul gets transformed into a whole new plane and is part of a huge interactive sort of all-knowing something else. There's the term for it in Kabbalah is I'm not sure what it is, but there's a huge consciousness that's everybody and everything that's ever lived, and it has the knowledge of everything that has been, and we are helping unfold what will be in the future. Sorry if this is getting a bit esoteric, but the point is that our feelings and emotions, they come from a guidance system which comes from the greater consciousness. So this, when you're born, you get a bit of a neshama put inside of you, and that's what the neshama and your feelings are really what guide you in life to what's better for you, what's not better for you. And if you listen to it, that guidance system is so, so important. But that little bit of a neshama that's put into you is plucked from that greater collective consciousness, and it's made up of many, many souls that have lived before you. So when you really connect with somebody, more so than anybody else, you just feel like you've known them, it's because part of your neshama was also once in the part of the neshama that's inside of them, and so you're connecting from that really deep feeling level. It's not good, it's not bad, it's not anything. It's just that there's a recognition with some people, and that's how it comes across from past lives. And when you die, you go back into this huge collective consciousness, so there will never ever be anybody else who is exactly like you, but part of you will go into somebody that you will, and that new baby or that new person will one day connect with somebody else who also has a little tiny part of you as part of their neshama.
That's so interesting. I actually never thought about it that way.
Yeah, it's when I heard it, it sort of just developed over the years. So it's all really, really good. But the more sympathy, the more empathy, not sympathy, because everybody goes through their own life lessons, and you cannot make anybody's life better by making yours worse. So they have to go through whatever they have to go through. You can't save them, you can't make it better for them, and that's part of the challenge, especially when you've got siblings and parents and people that you love, and you don't want them to go through bad times.
Right.
But both those bad times are what define what they really want even better for the future. So it's really all good.
Yeah, and it shapes their character, it shapes who they will become.
Absolutely. So tell us a little, you spoke about the journalism course that you wanted to do, and you wanted to do it for a lot of really great reasons. Talk to us a little bit about that, and then we'll have another song and have you back. And Morris Klein has called in, so we'll be able to speak to him before the end of the show as well.
Yep, definitely.
So the journalism course and your motivation for coming in and doing that.
Well, journalism is something that's always actually been in my blood, since I was a little girl. Actually, I love writing. I find it a very good outlet for myself. I might not sound it on the radio, but I am actually quite articulate, and I do like to express myself through words, through writing and all that. So
and you come through beautifully, so don't even worry about it.
I'm just a bit sort of finding I'm at this sort of stage in time where I've sort of just come from Israel, getting used to speaking Hebrew 24/7, and now I'm having to speak English 24/7, and it's this mix of two languages, so it's sort of everything's at the tip of my tongue. But
put it that way, if you weren't articulate, you wouldn't be concerned about it.
Yeah, pretty much, maybe. So yeah, I mean, I've always been interested in writing. It's something that's always it's been a passion of mine, and something that I'm quite good at, I would say, if I don't mean to toot my own horn.
Absolutely.
In Hebrew and in English, both of them, but I would like to use this gift as something that I could use to influence the greater public in terms of what's happening in the world, politics and all that stuff. I would love to use it in the papers. I would love for people to read my work and become influenced by it, because we do have a bit of an issue nowadays in the media whereby the left wing is becoming a lot stronger, and it's actually been influenced by a lot of how do I say it? See,
it's not. No.
It's sort of been taken a bit out of proportion. I think it's been blown a bit out of proportion, is what I want to say.
But it's part of the superficiality of our times.
Yes.
People they hear something, they hear somebody that sounds like they know what they're saying,
exactly,
and so they'll pick it up.
But not only that, I mean, a lot of people nowadays in this generation, I mean, in my generation, actually are they start talking about things to make themselves feel better about themselves, sort of try to make themselves more morally acceptable, more ethical, more, they try to put themselves sort of on a pedestal because they eat clean, or they have a specific lifestyle, or they think specific things about minorities and whatever. But the fact of the matter is, like, there are laws in position for specific reasons, and the reasons are that we've actually been through so many things, so many events in our history that
sorry, I thought we went off here for a minute.
No.
Sorry. Yeah.
Still working? So we've actually been through so many things in our history that people are tending to forget now, because they become so out of connection with it, because we're a much later generation. This is how I perceive it. We're a much later generation, and we are less connected to the events of the past, such as the Great War and the Second World War, the Holocaust, other major wars in everywhere, all over the world, genocides, all the bad things that have happened in the world. We're not connected to it as the previous generations are, and that's a problem, because we are trying to influence so much change, and change is a great thing sometimes. But on most occasions that they're speaking about in recently in the news and all over the world, it's a bit of a problem. You know, I understand that there is a fine line between racism and anti-Semitism and being a bigot, but there are specific laws in place for a reason, and I think I don't really want to expand politically, if you know what I mean. Yeah,
we don't want to get too heavy into politics. But the truth is that people's definitions and people's understandings are not the same,
right?
Because they've made their minds up already and they're not open. So if they label somebody a racist, they must be.
Exactly.
But often they're not.
Exactly,
and so it's just opening up. It's just become that experience.
The world, I think, has just become, as much as we're trying to make it a much safer place, we've actually made it a very unsafe place in terms of what we're allowed to say. Our freedom of speech has been quite literally taken from us,
and is being taken from us, from the people that were supposed to be the bastions of free speech.
Definitely.
So if you don't agree with the Democrats, then you do not have free speech. Free speech is only repeating.
And you can just see, I mean, look what's happened, like with the Women's March. That was sort of, it was born from a very good place in good faith for women, and was just turned completely on its back. It was turned into some sort of an anti-Semitic, anti-Zionist organization. organisation, and that's just one example of how the extremist left wing, I'm talking about extremist on all sides is just a bad thing, but I mean the specific extremist left wing has taken something good and crumpled it into
something bad. Let's have you come back when Morris is back and have a whole session on the women's movement, because that in itself is fascinating, and you have a unique perspective from your demographic as well. I thank you so much for coming in. I'm glad to hear we're going to hear lots more of you on our program.
Thank you so much.
Our program and others. You've got a voice, and a voice that'll be important to listen to. Dominic